we offer for you at Invite Health. Today I want to talk about the probably most popular anti-aging supplement of all time, and that is Resveratrol. Now, the reason I wanted to talk to you about Resveratrol is that oftentimes people are completely unaware of the way that Resveratrol has been studied when it comes to our immune system, as well as respiratory health. So I think it's a fabulous product, and I think it's something that many times when we think about taking vitamins and minerals and different antioxidants, we recognize resveratrol as being touted as the king, kind of in a sense, of anti-aging supplements. And that's for a reason. When we think about the way resveratrol kind of came into the spotlight, we can go back and we can look at how researchers were talking about what is known as the French paradox. And in the French paradox, this was classically known as when they would look at people in France and they were looking at their dietary intake of certain foods. And then they were looking at the correlation between lower levels of cardiovascular disease. And it made them think, what is it in the French diet that seems to lead to this cardioprotective benefit? And it really came down to a lot of the high antioxidant foods that they were intaking in their diet, including resveratrol, which we know comes from a variety of different foods, but most commonly we think about it coming from things like grapes. So we think about red wine, for example. Oftentimes people have correlated red wine intake with that cellular support. Now, we don't certainly advocate people going out and slamming down bottles of wine to try and get your resveratrol. Ideally, the way that you get your resveratrol is through supplementation and using a high potency extract of that resveratrol. Now, interestingly enough, when they started to look at the resveratrol, they recognized that it had this really finite ability to activate something known as sirtuin. Now, sirtuin is this whole family of different proteins that are responsible for the activation of certain genes, which can help to support cellular longevity. So sirtuin 1 in particular is where the primary focus was. So if we look at sirtuin 1 and we recognize that the sirtuin class of these wonderful supplements that we can obtain from resveratrol can get activated, then it makes a lot of sense when we're thinking about the lifespan of our cells. Now we can fast forward and we can look at how researchers really started to move on and say, okay, well, if it's doing this with the sirtuin proteins and it's helping with this gene activation, which helps with cell longevity, what else is it doing in the human body? And this is where they ran into some really incredible research, finding out that the resveratrol itself is really responsible for both our innate and our adaptive immune system responses. So when we look at different ways by which the immune system kind of gets revved up in the setting of different infectious agents, including things like bacteria as well as different viruses, we recognize that the resveratrol is very honed in on our natural killer cells, on helping to support T helper cells as well. So it really is a very beneficial thing to have on board. We obviously know that the antioxidants are going to help defend off free radicals, so the oxidative stress that comes along with any type of a pathogen. But now understanding the way that it is working within these different pathways in which inflammatory cytokines are released, most notably is NF-kappa beta. So NF-kappa beta is kind of this master regulator in the human body when it comes to inflammation. So too much NF-kappa beta activation equals extreme inflammation. We've all been hearing about this cytokine storm that can occur with certain cases of COVID-19. And this is when the immune system itself gets really overactivated and we end up with this really harmful systemic inflammation that is occurring. So when we think about resveratrol, we recognize that it's helping with the downregulation of NF-kappa beta, at the same time helping to support those other key immune systems. Now, let's also think about it in the setting of respiratory health. Why does this matter right now? Well, we know that COVID-19 likes to attack the respiratory system. What we know about resveratrol, and just thinking back When they first stumbled across resveratrol and their primary focus was anti-aging, now they've recognized all of its benefits in terms of blood glucose regulation, in terms of targeting neuroinflammation in the brain, in terms of helping to support kidney function, as well as lung function. So when we think about lung function, what we know about resveratrol is this has been studied across the spectrum of all types of respiratory disorders, including things such as asthma, including things such as pulmonary fibrosis, and COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So in all of these different clinical research trials, they've been able to show that resveratrol actually does so many different things to help to enhance the way that our respiratory system is responding to these bouts of inflammation. So one thing that they know that it does is the regulation of NF-kappa beta, but they also have been able to recognize that the resveratrol, this powerful trans resveratrol, this is the main thing that we want out of that resveratrol, is the trans resveratrol, very powerful antioxidant. They recognize that it can target the oxidative stress that creates all of the havoc within the respiratory airways. But they also know that it can help in means of helping to thin out that mucosal membrane. If we have too much mucus that is accumulating, then this can be very problematic, especially when we think about different viruses and different bacterial infections. If we are creating an environment, so let's think about a lot of mucus, that's a good environment for bacteria and for viruses to get rooted into. Once they're rooted into that, it's much more difficult to get rid of them. So we know that the resveratrol is very beneficial for targeting that mucus. We also know it's helping to fend off the oxidative stress to support all of the cells within the lung, as well as in the upper airways. So it makes sense that resveratrol has been studied for support in pulmonary fibrosis, and this is when you actually get scarring that occurs within the lungs themselves. It's been studied in COPD, asthma, as well as other respiratory concerns. So when we think about resveratrol, that's wonderful. If you want to take resveratrol because you're thinking about trying to age gracefully, fabulous, go for it. But also recognize that at this time, resveratrol can give you a lot of support when it comes to your immune system as well as for your respiratory health. So there's so much science and research out there when it comes to trans resveratrol and just how powerful it can be. And I like people to understand when you're taking different nutrients, all of the multiple benefits that can go along with these nutrients. So keep resveratrol on your radar during this time. Very good for your lungs, also very good for the immune system. And heck, if you can help to support cell longevity, that's a good thing too. Now keep in mind that our stores do remain open. We have curbside pickup available for your convenience. We have our podcast that comes out daily as well as our radio program. So keep tuning in. I will be back with you tomorrow with a very, very special product that I'm very excited to talk to you about. So I will see you again tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Thank you.